Last night, old Kilimanjaro bowed his head. Mount Cameroon took his chin and put in his hand. The Congo said, "No, it's not true." Kubango said, "No, it's not true." Kalahari fell to his knees. Sahara held her breast and looked up to the skies. Lilongwe wept. Maputo wept. Lusaka, by the proud Zambezi, wept.
For the great son of Bemba, for the father of Zambia, for the last of that pride of African lions who roared for freedom and gave us these nations
last night. KwaZulu-Natal put her hands on her waists. The Orange, Limpopo, put their hands on their heads. Agadez ran across the desert shouting, Sudan, Sudan, brother, tell me it's not true. Sudan sat stricken beside the blue Nile. The Nile sat stricken, her waters ice cold. Luanda wept. Harare wept. Lusaka, by the proud Zambezi, wept.
For the great son of Bemba, for the father of Zambia, for the last of that pride of African lions who roared for freedom and gave us these nations
last night. The ghost of times past said to me, "Son of Africa, have you forgotten that there are names tattooed across these African skies? Thomas Sankara, Lillian Ngoyi, Muthemba Machel, have you forgotten that when they murdered Lumumba, they made him immortal? That when they tortured Madikizela, they made her eternal? Have you forgotten how tall they stood? Kwame Nkrumah, Fumilayo Ransome Kuti, Jomo Kenyatta, how tall they had to stand to stare down the colonizer, how high they had to reach to pull down the oppressor. Have you forgotten Joshua Nkomo, Sheba Tavawasi, and the shackles of Southern Rhodesia? Diolinda Rodriguez and the battle for Angola? Have you forgotten Samora Machel? That it was for Samora Machel Makeba sang when she spread her formidable wings and sang that song. It was for Samora Machel Makeba sang Mozambique, aluta continua, aluta continua, continua. But tell me, what is aluta? What is aluta in Southern Africa? Tell me, what is aluta without Kaunda? For it was Zambia that saw freedom thirsty and gave her water, that saw freedom homeless and gave her shelter, that saw freedom demotivated and gave her power. It was Zambia that chose to risk her own economy to free her comrades, to tighten her borders with racist neighbors, refusing to trade through countries in which black people were still in chains. It was Zambia that chose to shut herself off from her easiest access to the sea, to turn away from the ports of apartheid South Africa, of racist Namibia, of colonized Mozambique, of oppressed Angola. It was Zambia that chose instead the long, torturous freedom rail through independent Tanzania, standing shoulder to shoulder with Julius Nyerere, to hold up that shield of frontline states determined to break the advance of white supremacy rule across the continent. It was Zambia that chose to risk her own prosperity to save her brothers. This
Is
is
Aluta.
that under the wings of Kaunda,
Frelimu found refuge. This is Aluta. That in the shadow of Kaunda, Swapo found refuge. This is Aluta. That in the compound of Kaunda, the MPLA found refuge. This is Aluta. That in the heart of Kaunda, ZANU, ZAPU, the ANC, freedom found refuge.
This is the brotherhood upon which the foundations of our continent was laid by a generation of leaders who left office with empty pockets. For their kingdom was not of this world, so they did not invest in mansions. They did not invest in offshore accounts or designer suits. Their kingdom was of the mind. So they invested in education to transform a people who had been groomed to become carriers of wood in a colonial economy, to transform these people into a people who dare to stand tall. Their kingdom was of the future. So they invested in production. Yes, they may not have known how best to grow this economy, but they knew with every fiber of their Pan-African souls that Africa must control its resources, that Africa must grow its own food, that Africa must make its own cars if liberation is to be liberation, that Africa must fly its own planes, or Africa, independent or not, will remain in chains. Their kingdom was of the soul. So they invested in ideology, in negritude and ujama, in Zambian humanism and eclectic pragmatism. They sang songs and wrote poetry. And yes, they may not have known how best to grow this economy. Still, in their willingness to embrace their blackness, they gave dignity to our African souls. So that today, even in our brokenness, even in our wilderness, when we remember their names, Kaunda, when we whisper their names, Madikizela, when we recall their names, Lumumba, we straighten our shoulders and stand up taller, for they left us with what every mother must never fail to leave her sons, with what every father must never fail to leave his daughters. If they leave nothing else, they left us with pride. With a vision of what we can be as Africans in a world of diverse civilizations, of what we can offer as Africans to a world of diverse civilizations. They showed us that we need not be a people who lower their gaze in the company of others, standing at the gates, perpetually waiting to be led in. They instructed us that we can stand as equals, be led as regularly as we lead, for our heritage is rich and in our blackness is beauty. They told us that to the days of the pharaohs, to the days of the Mansas, to the days of the Kabakas, to the days of great Africa, we are destined to one day return. They left us with pride. And that is why last night, after a while, old Kilimanjaro raised his head. Mount Cameroon put his hands on his knees and stood up from his chair. The Congo said, Asante. Kubango said, Obrigado. Kalahari stretched himself up to his full height. Sahara wiped her tears and stood straight in salute. Lilongwe waved a white handkerchief. Maputo waved a white handkerchief. Lusaka, by the proud Zambezi, waved a white handkerchief as he walked into the night. The great son of Bemba, the father of Zambia, the last of that pride of African lions who roared for freedom and gave us these nations last night, Kaunda died.
Alanam la bom